Hey, everybody. Before we get started, I wanted to ask everyone a favor. The way that we get these... This is so stupid. Why am I so bad at this? Starting over. Hey, everybody.
And I'm Jonathan.
Whenever I try and do this off the cuff, it never works. I have to
What do you want to say?
I want to get people to go and leave comments and reviews about the podcast, because that's how we get the show out. That's how we grow our listener base.
Paul.
And I can never think of a way to do that like it sounds casual, like, oh, I just thought of this 30 seconds ago.
Right. So,
but anyway,
Paul,
this is good enough.
Paul,
Yeah.
Huh? You just did.
Oh, I just did it. Okay.
I just want to tell people how important they are to us, and I always stumble over the
and
words.
I don't know how. This is the breakthrough, the not your fault moment from whatever that movie was. Not Will Hunting. Good Will Hunting.
Oh, yeah.
Not Will Hunting, the prequel. Would that be a good prequel, or would that be a good sequel? Not Will Hunting.
I mean, I would say it's a sequel about his kid.
Oh, that's a good point. Also, a movie I wouldn't want to see.
I mean, no, I could see it being like, it's one of those things. All right, so here's a little bit more. I want, so they're making a Frasier sequel / reboot, and I don't want that. I want a Frasier sequel, but I want it to be a sequel in the same way that like Cheers was a prequel, where Frasier was part of the cast, but the show wasn't about him.
The difference between the Frasier reboot / sequel and Not Will Hunting is that Matt Damon would be prominently displayed on the poster, but would only be in it for 30 seconds.
Right. Well, yeah,
that would be it.
That was going to be my point. So, if we were going to do a sequel, like, it would be kind of the equivalent of Creed to Rocky, where Will Hunting is in it, but it's not about him at all.
Well, you could turn it into a comedy where he tries to do like all the math equations and stuff, and all the professors are like, this is none of it. This is right.
Right.
This is all wrong. You were not a chip off the old block.
Right.
The apple apparently falls very far from the tree.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why we want you to sign up for Patreon, or not even sign up, just leave comments.
Yeah. Just go leave a 5-star review somewhere. Wherever you get your podcasts. That's what we want.
Yes, please, but just leave a review. I know that you keep saying 5 stars, but, everybody says that. Like, we love 5s, or...
Well, 5s are very beneficial. I think a 1 to 2, 3, not so good. Although I would like it just to know that you hate, you care, that it's the wrong kind of care, but you hate us so much that you're willing to take time out of your life to
tell us
leave a review.
3 Amigos is not what you say it is. I want to hear what people want us to do. If they don't like us if they want to like us, they just wish that we did something else, let us know. Like if you don't like us and you tell us because we're not talking about cooking, like we're not the show for you.
Yeah.
If you love us,
although we could,
yeah, please let us know. I think we've got 2 reviews, and one of them says 2 pals palling around, and then we have another one, which I don't remember what it says.
2 pals palling around. Not really complimentary.
I mean, that is a review. Like, that.
It is a review. That is true.
Yeah.
So there's this really cheap bourbon at Trader Joe's called something. I don't remember what it's called. But all of the words are like bold, unforgettable, and one other word that don't mean good. They could go anywhere. Like those are the taglines, but they aren't specifically good.
Full of flavor.
Yeah. I wish I could remember all 3 of them. But anyway, you get the point. That's what it feels like. As you know, this is the Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes a Star Trek episode a genuine Star Trek episode, and not just the sequel to the pilot of Star Trek Voyager. My name is Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and we determine this. Sorry, I was like, judge? No. Base it? Yeah, kind of, but we say that all the time. We determine this through 3 criteria. The first is there a sci-fi element that is required in the plot? The second is that sci-fi presented in a subverting of stereotypes or unique way? And 3, is there an ethical or moral dilemma that a character must face within the episode. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And this week, as I hinted at before, we watched Voyager Season 1, Episode 2, Parallax.
The sequel to the pilot.
Which just sounds like another character. It's like Neelix's son or something, or brother.
It's when Paris and Neelix merge together.
Oh, that'd be awesome. It'd be great if by the end of the 7th season, everybody's just new, like amalgams of different the characters that came before.
There's just one person leading, just running the entire ship.
The blurb for this episode: Voyager has set a course for home. Repairs are underway, and it's time to pick personal. Nope, and it's time to pick personnel to fill. Thanks, autocorrect, you dick. To fill vital crew positions. Okay,
it's time to pick, and this time it's personal.
This time, yeah. What was the time?
Which
before?
it kind of was. It kind of was for Janeway and Chakotay. Or what do you call him? Coyote?
Well,
Coyote.
It was Coyote. The Coyote.
Oh, man. That's a deep cut for
go.
anybody who lives in Arizona.
20 years ago.
Right. On KYOT.
Okay, so I have something to say about this episode. This is very strange. Okay. We just watched an episode of TNG called Where Silence Has Lease. An episode about the Enterprise being trapped in an endless void in space.
Yes.
And the next Voyager episode we watch is an episode where Voyager is trapped in an endless void in space. And it's so weird to me that there are all of these connections happening randomly. And it makes me think that either Star Trek is more connected than we thought it is.
Or not original. Not nearly as original as we thought it was.
But it's not like every Voyager episode is about being trapped in an endless void. Right? We just happen to find the one that is unoriginal to the one we just watched. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossibly weird, all of the connections that are happening.
I know.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Like you're right. Either there are more connections and just we are finding them because of the random generator, or the random generator is just randomly managing to make these connections that are just astonishing every time we discover them.
And it just occurred to me, it might be seeming like we're patting ourselves on the back by pretending that we randomly generate these episodes, but in fact, we've meticulously studied each of the episodes and found all of these links and are watching it in those links.
Right.
That is not what's going on. We are randomly generating these episodes.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening.
Yeah, and I feel like we're almost getting to the point where we are protesting it too much because we keep talking about how we're not we have no control over this.
Right, but it's happening. It keeps happening.
Right.
I could understand it happening every once in a while.
I know.
But it seems to be happening every single time.
Yeah, there seems to be a connection from this episode to the previous episode every time.
By the way, the main event in this blurb is totally only the opening of the show.
Oh, you're right. There's
nothing about why it's called Parallax,
right,
and the black hole and the singularity and the event horizon and all those different 90s movies, which doesn't usually happen in Voyager.
No,
Voyager
it doesn't.
Usually is pretty on point with the old blurb.
The Voyager blurb writer was sick this day, and they just called the DS9 guy. And they're like, "Hey, can you take care of these episodes for me?" He's like, "Yeah, I got you."
No problem. I can whip these out in no time.
Or, given the time, he's like, "Hey, I need to run to the bathroom. Will you just take care of this episode for me?"
He's got the whole season done by the time they're back.
Right. He's like, "Wow, you watched all of those?" He's like, "Well, I watched enough."
Yeah, enough to get the blurb down.
I got the gist of the episode. It's fine.
It's not going to be any different after the cold open.
Exactly. So, and kind of speaking to the premise of the episode and that kind of thing, like in Enterprise, there were episodes that dealt with time dilations and distortions and all that kind of thing, which means that it's been going on in space for like 300 years. And we still have characters going, wait a minute, so that's our ship that sent a distress signal to us before we hailed them. Am I making sense?
I know. They're like, no, you're not, Ensign Paris.
Right. Right. Get off
but
my
let me
bridge.
Explain it to you. But we still, so they had the teller scene done by Neelix to the 4-year-old Kess. So anyway, let's start with the episode. That's the episode. So it starts out with B'Elanna hitting Not Colm Meaney. And who is, I guess, the de facto engineer.
He's
engineer.
like the assistant chief engineer who's on track to be promoted to be the chief engineer. Yeah. Right. And we don't see him hit. We see him in the sickbay talking about how he was hit. Because if there's one thing that's great, is if you tell everyone what happened instead of showing it.
I think they wanted to do this slow kind of build. It is interesting that Janeway is not in the cold open.
Yes.
I felt like that was a very interesting way to take it. Like, that we're going to show the Chakotay side of things. And that you would think that in the sequel to the pilot that they would show the captain of the ship that you're on, of the namesake of the show. So, but they didn't. I thought that was a nice move.
Yes, and I was genuinely surprised. I say genuinely, I'm saying humorously, like this is for a joke. that she was not there to diagnose what happened.
Right. And they try and keep it a secret. They're like, I'm not going to tell her about it, but you better be glad I'm not going to do that. And the next scene, he's like, oh, the incident with what's his name? He's like, yeah, that's right. It's like, there was no like, how'd you know about that? I'm a captain of a ship, and people tell me these things. Anyway, so there's a point where Chakotay comes in to see B'Elanna after she's punched what's his name, and she's angry because Klingon. And she calls Chakotay. And she's the only one who does it this way. And I couldn't tell if this was a shooting order thing where they shot all of B'Elanna first, and they really leaned into, okay, he's going to have a non-American pronunciation name. And boy, did they drop that fast.
Yes.
Because I would be very curious if in the third episode, if anybody refers to him as Chakotay.
Chakotay? Just
Chakotay.
a little? Just...
Yeah.
Well, and hearing you say that, like a non-American sounding, I love the idea of somebody's name being a sound effect. Like, my name is... Well, I guess they kind of did it in Men in Black with that guy whose speak was beatboxing. Or like if they just even went even farther, and she was like, well, Chakotay.
With jazz hands. He insists it's part of his people that that's part of his name.
Yes.
If you don't use jazz hands, he will not respond to you.
A tiny truism. A crumb of a colloquialism.
Okay, so then we make it into the conference room, and where they're all sitting around talking about who's going to get which job. And it looks effing huge.
Yeah.
Like, it looks way bigger than it is in late. Maybe it's just how they shoot it in later seasons.
Right.
But it's super tall, and just even for a Star Trek era society where we're way beyond, things need to be as tight and as economical as possible. Even then, it's like, this is too much space for a spaceship.
Right.
We could. This is like 2 bedrooms, and it just looked. Did that not look big to you? I don't know if you catch that type of stuff.
Well, it did, but I didn't. I didn't see it as the conference room, because later on when they're in the conference room, it looked more how I remember it. I thought this was her quarters, her ready room. Like, what? It's not her quarters, but
I know they don't usually shoot it from like way super high up. I think it was like a beauty shot type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, having said all that, I feel like her ready room is huge in general. Like, isn't her desk on a second level?
Yeah, it's kind of like elevated a little bit, maybe. And there's a long couch.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it's very luxurious, very decadent.
Right.
Ready room.
And I think
but no fish.
Hot tub.
That would be awesome. And then the spatial distortion hits, and man, did they dial in the camera shake. It's so violent that if the ground or if the ship was actually shaking to the point at which they make it look like in camera, they would just all be dripping from the ceiling by the end of it. Like, you wouldn't be able to hang on. It would just be like putting a human somehow into a bottle and then shaking as fast as you can.
Right.
Just, it would not be just
every bone.
Just hang on. Yeah.
Every bone is just powder.
And they keep on with it too. I wonder if they know. I would love to watch the third episode because I want to see how much they dialed back.
Right. And we will.
Yeah, I guess we will eventually.
So
make a note. You make a note.
So one of the executive producers actually sent several DS9 videos, DS9 episodes to the cast, where the station or the Defiant is hit, she sent them a video saying, this is how you need to shake to make, like, this is the best shaking that the crews have done. And so this is what we want you to practice doing.
Apparently it's an art form to be able to pretend like you're being thrown around.
Right.
To make it look right. And especially when you're sort of taking a sharp turn or something like that, that to choreograph that amongst all the crew, it's you feel ridiculous, especially when you're shooting it.
Right.
But you have to be good at it. But okay, so they fix the spatial distortion or whatever. They stop shaking the camera, violently shaking the camera.
Right.
And they send the hail to the ship that they see, because they see a ship across the event horizon, and they want to say, oh, maybe they're in trouble. Are you in trouble? We can help. And then they receive a response that's the super distorted, you can't tell what it is, except me. Because I did not know what the outcome of this episode would be, but no matter how much distortion you put on that audio, I can tell when it's Janeway. I don't know if you could tell.
I couldn't.
But I could totally tell.
Yeah. No, with the distortion, I heard a voice, but that's hilarious. I love that. Like,
I totally called it. I was like, that's definitely Janeway.
So, okay, so knowing that it was Janeway, what was your thought at that point?
I just kind of knew that, it's going to be them back in time or some sort of, time distortion, whatever. I didn't know. I didn't sound like I called what the actual crux of the plot was going to be.
Right.
But I knew that, okay, that's them.
Okay.
How that comes to be, I have no idea.
Right.
But and that kind of gets into our criteria a little bit, I will say. I guess we can talk about it now. I think this hits the beats or hits all the criteria except number 2, which is it novel or unique? I feel like this whole idea of, number 1, of being trapped in a void that you can't get out of, which is what trapped means. And that's not novel. We just saw that. And I feel like that's been explored many a time in previous science fiction. And this whole idea of the same ship, of, we've been in the thing all along, it's been us all along, it didn't feel super novel to me. It felt very kind of paint by numbers, generic science fiction.
Yeah, no, it was very paint by numbers. And it's very similar to the episode with 2 Picards, where they're trying to figure out how there's this time loop. So, and anyway, yeah, like I agree. And I didn't think about that criteria element, but you're right. It's a good episode. I enjoyed it. But it's not anything we haven't seen before.
Yeah. And it was almost there. It kind of had they just didn't explore it very well. They didn't go very far. And the way that they get out of it later in the episode when B'Elanna and Smarty Pants.
Yes. I'm so glad you bring
concoct. I know. She was very smart in this episode.
Yeah, it's very smart.
Very smart.
Very smart.
All
right, go ahead. Then I want to talk about that part because,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so they get it. The way that they solve these things is they just have 2 characters bouncing ideas off each other, and then they're like, "Did that work? No, it didn't work. Okay, but try this thing, this technobabble thing. That worked? No, it didn't work."
Right. Well, it's kind of like what happened last time. Where Janeway said, "Get it to this point somehow," and Paris is like, "On it."
Yeah. Pretends to type things.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah. Oh, that didn't work, Janeway. What next?
Brings out a ratchet, like.
As long as you look like you're doing work,
right.
Fake it till you make it.
It turns out the whole ship is genuinely automated, and the captain just does not know that. And everybody's training is just to make it look like you're doing things by pushing buttons.
So on Next Gen, in a situation like this, where there's a lot of technical stuff that they want to do with the ship. Mm-hmm. And they do it very expertly on Next Gen, where Geordi has an idea, he executes it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't work, there's some sort of effect it has on their situation.
Right.
It's not just, nothing happened.
And they
move on to the next idea. There's some sort of cause and effect, whether the idea is good or bad. And in this particular episode, when they would do that, when they had the Geordi stand-in, which was B'Elanna, and they would try and do something, and then they just like, oh, no effect, Captain. What next? And they would go on to the next technobabbly thing, and then that wouldn't work. And so it just wasn't as finely tuned of sort of a scenario. And I don't know, I felt like that's the difference between Voyager and Next Gen.
That was part of what made Next Generation intriguing, was there was a level of progress each time something was attempted rather than it didn't work.
Right. Yeah. There's an escalation or deceleration or something. Like there's something happening in the plot. It's not just, oh, it didn't work. And I think the theme of this episode in a writing sense was not about the void or whatever they were in, the black hole. It was more about the character development. Mm-hmm. But even that became inconsistent throughout the show, because Chakotay, he reads to me in this episode as sort of a nascent bad guy. Like down the road, he is going to become mutinous, and he doesn't have the interest of the crew at heart, and all he cares about is gaining control of the ship or something or other. Almost what what's her name does later in the show. Mm-hmm. And so it just felt very kind of unsettled in terms of how they did all of the character stuff. I think it's true that of any show, you just don't have solid footing with the characters yet, which is fine. I don't begrudge it that.
So the episode was written by Brandon Braga, and he actually had no hand in the writing of Caretaker, the first episode, and he hadn't seen any of the actors play their characters yet. So he wrote this blind based on the character descriptions. So that's probably why all of the characters didn't feel the way that they do later on.
Interesting. Well, I kind of like that idea that he's like, this is what I think Voyager should be, not this bullshit Caretaker stuff. It's like, I'm not going to look at it. But I don't know. I felt like the whole side thing of the Doctor's height being reduced and all that, I don't know why that was in this episode. It was this weird comic relief thing that maybe they felt like the Doctor needs to be the comic relief because he's so kind of cantankerous and grumpy all the time, and he treats his patients like crap.
Right.
Like, this guy has a clear head injury and he's just throwing him around on the holodeck. No, on the sick bay.
Well, so it was interesting because this episode helped Robert Picardo find his character as well. He had kind of an idea of who the character would be, but then there was some dialogue in it where he talks about how he has the intellect of 47 medical pioneers or something like that. And he's reduced to botany or something like that.
I actually did like that line where he's like, how many samples of dirt did you need?
Right.
How much dirt did you need? I thought that was great.
And, and he said, Robert Picardo was talking about how he would be mad. He'd be pissed that, like, he's now being used for all of the mundane medical treatments when he is supposed to be used for disasters and difficult things where the head doctor would not be able to take care of them.
See, there's a discrepancy there for me, because he's always presented by humans, the EMH, Emergency Medical Hologram, for those just tuning in.
Who've never seen Star Trek.
Yeah, and they always present him as being just sort of a tool and he's not supposed to have any personality. He's just in case of emergencies. And then you have the actual EMH, who has a fully developed personality. He has all of the knowledge you'd ever need. You think an EMH would be almost like a paramedic,
right?
Where they're trained specifically for emergency situations, where they may not be able to operate in brain surgery, but they can get you from on the cusp of death to stable. Right? That's their job.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. But he's this culmination of all. He's as he said, the embodiment of modern medical science. And I don't know where that discrepancy bothers me. That they've all met him and they all see that while not a nice person, he appears to be a person. But they treat him like he's just a hypo spray. And it's weird to me that they're trying to it would have been better had they have him have no personality in the first half of the season, and then things start happening to him where he develops one, as opposed to just being a dick the whole time.
Right.
But he's great. He's always been my favorite character.
Yeah.
I always felt like he has that right amount of subtle comedy, because he is obviously the comic relief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get what you're saying, but I think it's at that point it would just be kind of a choice, because if thinking about where an EMH would be used, genuine emergency situations, like the personality is irrelevant, and as we've seen, Dr. Zimmerman, is that right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Was very cantankerous, and so because he was based off of Dr. Zimmerman, he would have that same kind of get the job done rather than make sure that he's got good bedside manner.
Well, and bedside manner doesn't matter when you're in an emergency.
Right.
You're trying to save the person's life, not get them, from point A to point B in terms of emotional stuff,
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't like the whole side B plot of him getting smaller and smaller, and it just turns into a funny thing, and it never goes anywhere. It never really has an effect on anybody. And what if you had an emergency and the doctor can no longer fix people because you are making a joke out of it, and they never sent anybody?
It wasn't even like the end result was them realizing that they needed to pay more attention to the EMH when he is in the sick bay when there's nothing else happening. Like, it was genuinely, oh, that doctor.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Yeah. It felt like a sitcom.
Yeah.
Now, unless they kept him at that size for the rest of the show, then that would be something. He's like having to hop around.
Right.
He's got a bunch of boxes that he climbs up on to examine different patients.
Well, that would actually be pretty cool if it did turn out to be that way, and he had to program in various levels of accommodations to the bedsides to make sure that he could do everything he needed to, and so he just, as he's walking up to the bed, computer activate, whatever, like ramp 7.
Like hanging contraptions where he swings in.
I'd be like, hey, that's how I do my podcast.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Deep cut.
Okay. So they eventually find out through some experimentation and accidental experimentation that the other ship is them. And I hated this moment. I hated it. So they have the hail read back to them as it is sent to them of what Janeway originally hailed. So there's that little thing. They have the picture on the view screen of Voyager being like whatever it is, a little bit farther away. We can see that it's Voyager. And yet they had Tom Paris stand up and say, look, it's Voyager.
Uh-huh.
He didn't say that. He says, it's the Voyager.
It's the Voyager.
It's us. And which is all code for the audience are effing morons.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. From day one, like they knew that.
There's no way they're going to get this.
Yeah.
We need to have somebody say it explicitly. And the most frustrating part about this is the previous scene to that. Literally the previous scene. Janeway and Chakotay had shared a silent moment of acknowledgement about B'Elanna's abilities because she had just had that revelation about the sensors and whatever. And there wasn't a line at that point where Janeway exclaims to Chakotay, "You were right, Chakotay. She is really smart. I can't believe it. I'm sorry." They didn't do that.
Right.
And so why did they do the other thing? Why did they feel the need to telegraph it like that? It was so upsetting. I almost had to turn off the episode.
Yeah, well, and, again, just to keep talking about how great Next Generation is, when that sort of thing happened, they either underplayed it, where one of the characters would say to themselves, that's us, or that's the Enterprise. Or Riker would just turn to Picard and go, how the hell is that possible?
Yeah. They didn't need people, you didn't need a subtitle saying, the pictured is a shot of the Enterprise.
Right. I mean, maybe being the second episode, they were worried that people wouldn't be familiar with the shape and design of the ship. And so by seeing it outside, people would go, oh, there's an alien ship. And so they needed somebody to say, look, it's the Voyager. Which, quick note there, it was still being decided. No, it hadn't yet been determined that they would call the ship Voyager. Because in the previous shows, it was the Enterprise, the Defiant, and all that kind of thing. So they were still considering saying the Voyager for everything. And very quickly they decided to just call it Voyager.
It's just easier to say.
Yeah.
I think. Good call, by the way.
Right. Thanks.
Makes a lot of sense.
I thought so.
Like Facebook and Voyager.
Yeah. And the Instagram.
The Instagram. Okay, so I think what would have made this episode better for me, and maybe a little bit more of a proper episode.
Okay.
So Janeway and B'Elanna go out, and they have to widen the crack in the event horizon to get through, which it's all just BS.
Oh, yeah.
All this stuff about it doesn't make any sense. Yep. But anyway, they have to go out and they have to widen the crack. And then there's this dilemma of they see 2 Voyagers. Why they wouldn't see like hundreds or infinite Voyagers?
That would have been cool.
Why are there only 2? But they see 2 and they have to decide which one is it.
Right.
And they go through this sort of flawed logic of, well, it's this one because they would be going towards it, then we would went away from it. And not knowing anything else about what was happening, they just decided that Janeway was right because she's smart.
Right. Yep.
But would it have been cool if they unknowingly went on to the wrong ship and weird things started happening? They thought they were on the right Voyager. And of course, this would have to be done earlier in the episode to have time for this. So it wouldn't be in this sort of high stakes ticking clock scenario. And then Janeway encounters Janeway, B'Elanna encounters B'Elanna, or I like the idea that maybe they keep missing each other. And so there's like, what do you mean? I was just here. I just got back from the thing. What do you mean I'm missing? But they have to figure out like, why is this happening now? Why are there 2 Janeways and 2 B'Elannas? And that would have been interesting.
Right.
And I know that's kind of more like what the 2 Picards episode was. I can't remember what's that, nth squared or nth degree or something like that.
Right, but it also wasn't told from the other Picard's perspective. And, so that would have made this more unique.
Yes, that's true. Good call.
Yeah.
So that would have been more fun for me, is them, and you wouldn't know that they chose the wrong Voyager. It would be later discovered that there are 2, if not many Voyagers, and they have to figure out a way which one is their native Voyager.
Right.
But that would have been fun.
Yeah.
That's more science fiction-y in a Star Trek way of like, oh, there's another ship, but it's kind of like ours, but not really. Like we seem to have time traveled backwards for some reason.
Yeah. So just a quick note there. So the shuttle's name was Tereshkova, and hang on. No, this is taking too long. There we go. What?
I'm laughing at myself making funny noises.
Oh. Yeah, so the shuttle was named Tereshkova, who was the first woman in space. She was a Russian. And so...
All that time for that? All that time.
Why are you leaving? Why? Like, why are you responding that way?
Well, now...
like, now I have to redo it so we can keep talking about it.
No, all the space is staying in. All the time. Just so we all know what the value of that tidbit of trivia was.
But the other part, too, at that point was she says something about how like the scans are identical. But what should have happened, and this was the thing that frustrated me about this episode, about Janeway being the smartest person in the room every single time. Technically, the right Voyager had 2 missing life forms because it was without a Janeway and without a Torres. And so that should have been the discrepancy. Yeah, so it should have been the discrepancy between the 2. And Torres should have figured that out.
Also, I'm sure there are a lot of other metrics that ships have where they're Bluetoothing over to each other.
Right.
That, this is like IDs and clock synchronizations, because when you travel in space and stuff, time dilation is a big problem.
Right.
So they would always be talking to each other, and they would be like, oh, this one is the same as ours.
Right.
Let's go to that one. It would not just be which one is traveling away from us,
exactly,
which one is traveling toward us,
right,
as though they're on a boat in the middle of the ocean.
Do we get to talk about that part with the conference room and B'Elanna and Janeway being the smartest person in the room yet?
Yes.
Okay.
We can talk about that.
That part was so infuriating because the B plot, kind of what you were talking about, was just how B'Elanna deserved to be chief engineer. And it was a perfect time to show like Janeway how smart B'Elanna was because she figured these things out. But instead they get to have this little fangirl moment where they're saying the same thing at the same time and they're like, oh, twinsies.
I know. Same.
Right? I was so irritated that the writers took that opportunity to make Janeway still be the smartest person in the room when the whole episode was showing about how B'Elanna was just as, if not more capable than the person who was running to be chief engineer.
Yeah, and it was it was interesting to know that it was a ground level decision to make her the smartest person in the room at any given point.
Right.
Janeway.
Right.
That she knows, like, she should be the chief engineer.
Right. Yeah.
Or she should be whatever, she should be in the job of whoever she's talking to at that given moment.
Yeah.
And that is what we call a Mary Sue.
Yes.
And not, which actually originated in Star Trek. And it's not something that is fun to watch.
No.
It would have been better had, as you said, had B'Elanna either corrected Janeway or at least given Janeway information she didn't already know.
Right.
Because apparently Janeway was like, yes, you are right. That idea you just had about saving the ship, I had 5 seconds before. So you are correct.
Right. I was just waiting for other people to catch up to me. Right.
You win. Congratulations.
My boy. You've won. Right. And it would have been a great moment, for her to say something and the other engineer to be like kind of resigned / conceding to her, going, yes, that is a great suggestion. That would work. And like him kind of being like, I didn't think of that, but now you saying it, yes, that works. And that just demonstrates why you would be the better chief engineer, rather than Janeway just arbitrarily choosing her to make Chakotay happy and the other guy, being like, how can I help?
Well, also, not really fair to make that kind of decision of who's going to be my chief engineer on one scenario that she got right.
Right.
It's sort of like if I were to show up for a pitching contest or whatever they do, a draft, for back to the baseball stuff, and I were to magically like throw
they have baseball
a
auditions,
strike.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Yeah. I were to magically throw a strike on the first one and be like, that's our main pitcher. Look at
Right.
that. He threw a strike on the first one. I don't need to see anything else.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this needs to take some time because she might be really good at this one thing, but a total idiot at the other stuff.
Right.
I don't know. It was just weird that they decided in this episode. I thought this was going to be half a season of them ping-ponging back and forth with, no, it's B'Elanna. No, it's this other guy.
Right.
But it was like they decided at the end of it.
Yeah. But again, like even if they did need to decide it at the end of it, there should have been moments throughout the whole thing where she was creatively coming up with alternate ways of doing things that when bounced off other people, they said, yes, that would work. That's a great way of looking at this that we hadn't considered, which would show that she has an alternate perspective to things that would help in the engineering room.
I agree.
Good.
I agree. I thought they were just going to kill the other guy, and that would have made the decision very easy. That makes more sense.
That would have been so infuriating. I would have hated that if they did that.
Well, I wonder, he must die at a certain point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess everybody dies, but I mean in the course of the show.
Right. I would have hated if they had done that, because that meant that she wasn't genuinely choosing Maquis members to be security officers. She was picking by default. Like, well, I was going to give it to this guy, but he's dead. So congratulations.
Yeah. Well, they didn't do that.
Right. They
didn't do any of those things.
No.
She just decided that, we're twinsies.
Yeah.
So guess what?
Oh, and then not only is she the smartest person in the room whenever B'Elanna's there, but also she has to kind of hold her intelligence over Chakotay at the end when, he's like, so if the roles were reversed and the Maquis ship was here, would you be my first officer? And she's like, as a captain, I get to keep these secrets.
What does that mean? I mean, I was trying to think of, does that mean yes or does that mean no?
Right. Well, that was I'm not going to tell you how much you should trust me.
That was this is how much it sucks to be you.
Right. And it would have been a great moment between the two of them where, it's kind of a jerk move, but if she was like, I haven't really thought about it and I'm kind of glad I don't have to,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I can see not wanting to reveal that. I can see not wanting to reveal it if the answer was no.
Right.
Quite a bit. I can also see the strategy of I don't want to reveal to my first officer that I am somehow weak by saying yes.
Right.
Which is also not a trustworthy thing to do.
Right.
So I think it was just trying to be cute with the writing. And why was she standing up there watching everybody? And how did she? Can you get there like some other way into engineering?
Oh yeah, I forgot it was lording over everyone.
It was very weird. I was like, oh, this is creepy.
Yeah.
Does she do this all the time?
Right. Like,
how long has she been there?
Yeah. See, so this makes me wonder, and I haven't looked up her history, but I wonder if the idea for Janeway was that she started in engineering. Because the more I think about it, the more I think that that's where most of her ideas, if not all of them, are promoted. And
she's like a scientist. She's more of a scientist. At least they paint her as that.
Okay.
Although I love your idea. That's so much better than her being the original captain. I love that she's next in command somehow. I actually don't know who's next in command. If it goes captain, first officer, and then who?
Right.
But that would have been so awesome if she had to become captain rather than already being captain.
Right.
Just it would have been fun, a little bit more fun to explore because she wouldn't be a Mary Sue at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. She would kind of be learning as she went anyway.
Everybody's kind of thrust into their new positions by the captain and first officer dying.
Right.
She was the original engineer.
But they didn't do that.
Okay. So we're agreed, not a Star Trek episode?
Yeah, no, I was leaning towards yes, but it was just because of the first and the third. But I mean, even the third one's kind of weak. Like there wasn't really like the moral dilemma was should she pick a Maquis member as a ship rank?
Right. It was kind of the battle of right versus proper.
Yeah.
Or right versus appropriate.
Yeah.
And she was on the side of, once again, siding with, we are in the Federation. We follow Federation protocols, except when I say.
Right, until we don't, yeah.
Until we don't. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of weak, but it was there.
Right.
But just not a novel expression of science fiction.
Yeah, no,
it was just sort of
yeah, I completely
vanilla.
agree with that. So, no.
Okay. But I did enjoy the episode.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it was a good episode.
Yeah. All right, let's see what we're watching next.
Okay. In a Mirror Darkly, episodes 18 and 19 of season 4 of The Enterprise, or the Star Trek The Enterprise. I guess at this point it's the Star Trek.
I think it's just Enterprise.
So the blurbs are: the Mirror Universe crew is at war with rebels of the Empire when they discover the Tholians have captured a vessel from the future. After capturing a Constitution-class starship from the future, the evil Mirror Universe Captain Archer attempts to become Emperor.
I hope he has a goatee.
Oh, that would be so cool.
I really hope he has a goatee.
Yeah.
I'm not going to know what the hell is going on.
This
is the end of the show by the time it had reached full serialization.
So A, you will know everything that's going on. And B, as much as I like this episode, I really don't like this episode.
Oh, well, that's confusing.
I know. Yeah, let's go watch it.
Well, wait, did you read the second blurb?
I did. Yeah, I read them together.
Oh, you read them together.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I've been Jonathan.
And I've been Paul.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
But you already knew that.